Woozle Wuzzle novelist readers, welcome back to another I Play Minecraft with me, Ash. We're back to the digging, and with this stone pickaxe, everything takes forever, and the pickaxes break really fast. We certainly have a reason to make a massive wheat farm and convert those into emeralds so that we can level up our villagers. Yet the prospect of building a massive wheat farm doesn't sit well with me. It's not that I'm overcome with fear and anxiety like so many other things in my life. This is an apprehension built from my ego. There's this part of me that always wants to do things a little bit different. I have this deviant streak within me. I have this desire to be the iconoclast. And it's this part of me that I honestly don't understand. I don't know where it comes from, and I don't know if it's something I should be proud of. Growing up as a 90s kid, there is this ideal to be your unique self, no matter what. Within that narrative, they didn't really explain how a person is supposed to deal with the inherent paradox within being unique. Like, okay, let's say you're striving for the 80s ideal of being the punk rocker. So you already have some ideal in your mind about what kind of clothes, what hairstyle, what bands you like, your tattoos, etc. These aesthetics are built into this act of rebellion. And within every single act of rebellion, within these acts of rebellions, there's typically this branding that occurs within it. This contradiction was something I was painfully aware of going into high school. It kind of became a running joke for me that everyone had to be a rebel just like all the other iconoclasts, especially when you grow up in this culture of trying to celebrate the individual. Even though that celebration of the individual was just another way for companies to sell things to the apathetic Gen Xers. It's kind of become a part of the central struggle of my identity, this idea of conformity. My desire to be different can be so strong that if somebody orders what I wanted to order at a restaurant, I will order something else even if I don't think it sounds that good, simply so that I am doing something different. The level of insecurity and apprehension I have towards my desire to be different, it gives me a great deal of apprehension about one of the central problems of being a writer, which is, this belief that there is, in fact, nothing new under the sun. It's all about new presentations. It's all about new combinations of these literary aspects that we've grown accustomed to. As a writer, I really only had two options. I can simply accept that no matter what I do, someone is going to compare my work to somebody else's, calling it a derivative of other works, or I can desperately try to construct something that's so unique that people can't make those comparisons, including and not limited to actually breaking the rules of syntax and established conventions of writing. It shouldn't be a surprise that I initially went with that second option. The idea that I'm writing the same thing that somebody else wrote with slight variations or a synthesis of 2 or 3 stories fills me with all kinds of apprehension. I don't like it. The first decade of my writing was devoted to being an iconoclast. I formatted everything flush right. I played around with centralizing things. I would have dialogue jump from the left side of the page to the right side of the page to show the back and forth. I played around with fonts to the point of using wingdings. I did everything that I could to make these stories different. And of course, inevitably, I still got comparisons to other works. And the second I did, I would just tell myself oh, well, it's okay, there's nothing new under the sun, blah, blah, blah. I used this mantra to protect my ego. But the truth was that I hadn't ever really addressed the central problem. When it comes to conformity, the act is painful. It's made me a difficult student growing up. You're basically told that there is a right way to do things. And once you find that right way to do things, you're supposed to repeat it. And if everyone's doing the same thing, it should be fine. But it doesn't feel fine to me. I am just this person who can't cope with being so similar and average. If I imagine myself as this normal person who just smiles and wears exactly what I'm supposed to and reacts how I'm supposed to, I feel replaceable. And I think that's at the core of this idea of being an iconoclast, is that I want to be special. Of course, it doesn't work that way. The opposite is that usually true, that by being different, you're not made special, you're not held up with reverence. Instead, you are attacked for being different. You are ridiculed and the object of scorn. And I know I've been the object of scorn for pointing out something different or for trying to draw attention to some sort of a larger issue that I feel everyone else is ignoring. There have been rare occasions where some people have thanked me for challenging worldviews and daring to be different, as the Transformers movies tells us. But the reality is that most people are not only comfortable with conforming, but it is a goal. I think that I gravitate towards these avenues of expression because it is a place that humanity has more or less agreed to be acceptable, to have variation. If I play a new song, no one is going to hassle me for being too different. It might be surprising to hear that I was heavily into mathematics. But on the one part, most people don't like math. The conformist way to approach mathematics is to just say you hate it, it's not for you, why do you have to learn algebra when it doesn't affect your life, etc. There's so many talking points that are almost universally accepted for why math is a complete waste of time. And I think because of that, it helped me enjoy mathematics. There's a lot we could say about me getting into mathematics. In the end, it was a form of expression for me. I was able to be creative. I was able to exert my will upon this conformist space of the field of math. I think that was important for me as a writer. The point is that my lack of conformity isn't just, oh, haha, I always order something different at a restaurant. It's something that is negatively affecting my life. I can't be a brand because the second I am a brand, I'm like some other brand. It's one thing to try to hide under this mantra of there's nothing new under the sun, but it's another thing entirely to make myself a symbol or a brand and go, oh, I'm like this other brand. I am like this other person. When my writing deliberately tries to break genre conventions to the point that it's basically not the same genre, that's when my desire to be an iconoclast ruins my potential for success. Because as much as I understand the conventions of a genre, I feel the push to either create a subgenre or to break away from these genres entirely and just be speculative fiction. And that is very hard to market, and it's led to some really, really bizarre criticisms from people because they're expecting one thing, and I'm not subverting their expectations in a narrative way. I'm subverting their expectations in a genre way. And when you do that, people react very different. So I either need to be comfortable with conforming to some extent, or I need to find some way to market completely out there, superfluously iconoclastic writing. And I know that some people do make a career out of being that different, but I don't think that I have the skills to effectively market myself. I mean, my videos continue to get like 0 views, and it's kind of expected because I'm not marketing right now, but I don't know who I am, and so I'm not exactly sure if I'm ready to market myself. If you're looking for an example of how different my writing can be from genres, just jump on the link in this description for my Wattpad and read my current story, which I really enjoy, and I'm very proud of that story. And I think it's a step in the right direction for my writing, but it's also very much not a genre fiction piece. It's not something that conforms to the genre expectations, and as such, I don't think it's marketable at all. Okay, so what does any of this have to do with Minecraft? Well, believe it or not, Minecraft is a place filled with conformity. There are people who make a living off of those who desire to make the ideal setup. It's one thing to have a sugarcane farm. It's another thing to have a sugarcane farm that is maximum optimization. And while I love those channels that do have optimized builds. The thing that gets me is that I don't think that those optimized builds should be repeated as is. I feel like people should be looking at those builds and thinking, okay, this is the basic design philosophy. How can I use that within the space that I have? But that's not how people genuinely play the game. And I know this because I've been on several servers by this point. When people jump into a Minecraft server, they make the optimized builds by clearing out a space and building it brick for brick before putting a design around it. It's never design first and then you work in some sort of a suboptimal build. It's always optimize the build and then put on the flavor. And I kind of hate that way of building Minecraft structures, especially since a lot of people never go to that second step of having the aesthetics around the optimized build. The massive wheat farm has become something synonymous with the game for me. People like to build off these flat surfaces, and so they tend to go towards plains. They level out the field. They build up their giant wheat farms with giant cow fields. They have some gabled house roof, and I've seen this same build on a plain so many times that I feel like that is the Minecraft build. So since I am struggling with conformity, I've decided to try to make this entire island into a conformist haven. I'm going to try to make a conformity island. I'm starting leveling out the land and building up this giant wheat farm. And I've probably already put an hour and a half into leveling out this island, and I know that it's going to take a very, very, very long time. I didn't expect so many of my emeralds to be going into buying stone shovels. I'm probably going to have to cut back on how many of those emeralds I am spending, and I should just suck it up and make a quarry. But that's an issue for another time. I'm starting to get to the point where I have enough wheat to max out my farmer, and this means I need to increase my number of villagers, which I'll have to deal with next time, and I'm not exactly sure how. But I know that I want to approach it in a conformist way. I want everything that I'm doing right now to try to embrace conformity as much as I can. Will this work? I can't say, but I know that it's going to be difficult for me. I know that it's going to be a challenge. But I'm going to do what I can to have my own little spin on it, which I think is the way to have the conformist build in general. How long am I going to do this? I don't know. So let's take a look at my progress with some of the individual elements like the animals. Here you can see me corralling the cows. There's basically only two ways to make a conformist cow farm. You either put them into a giant space, or you cram them into a 1x1 hole. I actually can't cram them into a 1x1 hole because I don't have any redstone to make a piston. So I have to settle for a 2x1 hole. Entity cramming kills all of the cows, you get the resources you need, and you're good to go. Eventually, I'm going to have to restructure this or move the cows or do some finagling to get some hoppers under there, but I don't really care at this moment. I just want to get the cows so that I can say that I've done it. If you're unfamiliar with Minecraft, you might not understand the ubiquity with having a cow farm. So the whole reason you have this wheat farm is to have the cow farm, and the reason is because you need leather for books. Books are a core resource in the game. It allows you to make enchantments, and through those enchantments you can have items that rarely break and can be restored. So without sugarcane, I'm not going to have access to that magic. My only way to get around this is by careful use of exploiting the villagers, which I can and hopefully will do. And it's going to be painful, but in the meantime, I have this cow farm that I don't really need. Yes, I need food, but there's an easier way for me to get that, and that is through chickens. With 5 iron and a bit of wood, you can make a very easy to maintain chicken farm. The chickens will sit in this 1x1 hole. You throw eggs into there to generate new chickens. That kills the grown-up chickens, and then you get feathers and chicken. This gives you as much food as you can ever need, and they will generate lots and lots and lots of eggs. I set up a little campfire to cook the chicken. Right now I don't have the chickens incoming because I haven't filled up the hole all the way, but it won't take that long for me to have basically an unlimited supply of chicken to eat. Obviously, if I'm building up gabled houses, I'm going to need a lot of wood. So I've decided to suck it up and make a tree farm on the surface. And yes, it feels weird for me. And yes, I don't feel safe. And that might be weird for a lot of people who've played the game. But like, I either want to live in a hole or want to live on a tower. It's like, I don't know how that contrast works, but that's how I end up building. I have run out of polished andesite, so I'm going to have to mine some. That's something that I can worry about in the future. The reason all of the oaks are just in a straight line is because I'm going to build up the water system underneath it. It's a very easy way of collecting all of the saplings without needing to invest any time. There is, of course, the meta discussion about conformity. This video is very untraditional. I feel like this is kind of an attempt to just do things my way and not really worry about what space there will be. I feel like if people are honestly interested in me as a creator, then something this introspective and revealing will be interesting to them. As I've said before, it always comes at a cost for me. I'm not particularly comfortable with telling this much about myself, so I'm paying for this with pain. I've said before that I'm not really comfortable talking about myself and revealing these things about myself, and this might seem like a complete lie at this point, since I'm just going on and on about all of these like deep inner thoughts I have, but I just honestly don't know how else to share who I am. So why have I done this? Well, for one thing, I do believe in my central proposition, and that is that video games should be used as a tool to look into the psyche of decision making and the psyche of an individual. And instead, the only psychological framework I've seen around video games is analyzing development decisions, which is fine, and I think that's important, as all art analysis is. But I think that video games offers us this unique way of looking into the human mind. Like, I feel like all of our discussions about video games are from the outside looking in. What does the product do? What is the product trying to elicit? How does the product manipulate the individual? But I want to turn that around. I want to look at how does the individual interact with the product? If this is their favorite game, why? What does that say about the individual? Instead, oh, this game was Game of the Year. Why was it Game of the Year? What was so special about this game? And I don't think that we're really looking at video games in that light. It feels like people want to have these discussions about a product so that they can be a part of a larger conversation. If you just tell someone, oh, I liked a game, then it's like, okay, well, good for you. But we're trying to have this dialogue with hundreds of thousands, if not tens of millions of people. While one individual's experience might mirror another individual's experience, having a larger discussion about a product enables more people to engage in that discussion. If I say, oh, I like this game because of my childhood, and I'm going to give some anecdote about it, what are you going to say in the comments to that? Oh yeah, me too. Like, you also had that exact discussion, or you also had those feelings. In a way, I feel like the modern culture and the constant discourse is anti-individualistic. That the individual has no value because we are all individuals. You are not special for being one. And that seems to be an undercurrent with how we're analyzing media. You look to the media and you talk about what it did right, what it did wrong, why did it do that decision, etc., etc., etc. But when you ask, what is the individual's experience? I don't know. Sometimes we can get trapped into thinking that we understand who these creators and influencers are. That because we can relate to their thoughts about a product, we can relate to the individual. But the truth is that they almost never share facts about themselves. They almost never tell us about their thought process and their preferences. And I don't think that this is an accident. If you don't have a stance, then people can't disagree with that stance. The most of a stance that people really take about their persona is what political ideology they hold. And considering how surface level our discussions about politics really are when you look at them, then you can understand why it's so easy to relate to people. You can just point at someone and go like, oh, they did a bad. And then people will like nod their head and go like, yeah, that's right, they did do a bad. I like this person because they're willing to say that they did a bad. Does that really tell you who the individual is? Sure, to some extent, but is it an emphasis on their individuality? And on the flip side, you have people who are using themselves as a brand. And it's like, oh, I like this thing, I like this thing, I like that thing. But I don't see a deeper analysis into those preferences, and that's probably just because we don't really talk about the self that way. I can understand that some people don't want anything to do with that. They want to have their anonymity, and that's it. So what's the problem? I don't know. I see people associating their identity with the identity of these public personas. Whether they're creators or influencers, they become stands for them, and they will fight anyone who says anything bad about them. They will go out of their way to protect them. They will destroy other channels or other creators if that person simply points the finger or has a sideways glance at them. I think that denying the prevalence of stan culture ultimately benefits those who are at the top, because anyone smaller than them can't really compete, right? They don't have those stands, especially if they are anti-stan themselves. Who's going to win a fight? A person who says like, oh, well, I don't want you to stand for me, and I think that you should view everything critically, or someone who deliberately cultivates that mentality from their fans. I think that this discussion about individuality is so important because people are using individuality as a tool. They're using the idea of personal connection to manipulate people into following them and supporting them financially to the point of the detriment of their followers. As much as I acknowledge that my need to be an iconoclast has gotten out of control, I don't want to be like every other influencer and content creator. I don't want to become this person who goes to VidCon and has a banner that tells people to subscribe to my channel and tries to, bury the lead during the first 5 seconds of every video before having a 3-minute long intro. I don't want to become this product that has a manufactured approach to interacting with people with the intent of creating obsessive loyalty from their consumers. I don't want obsessive loyalty. I think that obsessive loyalty is dangerous. This is a personal concept for me. I was emotionally abused as a child. I was conditioned to try to support someone and only that person. And to some extent, being an iconoclast helped me break out of that. It helped me fight against someone trying to exert their will upon me, to think like them and to be dependent on them. The more I see these slick, polished content creators, the more I see mirrors of emotional abuse, the more I see them trying to cultivate an obsessive level dedication from their fans. If you've ever watched a Twitch stream from someone even relatively of note, their stream is filled with thanks for the sub, thanks for the resubs, thanks for the 2 months, blah, blah, blah. Thanks for this, thanks for this, thanks for this. It becomes this innocuous, meaningless statement that has no value in it at all, except for the fact that they are saying your name. The gratitude has just been scrubbed away. And it's no surprise to me that it becomes sort of this competition to one up the last person who donated or the last person who subbed X amount of time, because then you might actually hear real gratitude from the streamer. I think it's pretty disturbing to think that people will pay far too much money just to hear gratitude from a person they will probably never meet. And so when I think about myself as a brand, I think about being a part of that discourse. I think about being another cog in that machine, that I can be a part of this system that finds people who need an emotional connection with some online presence. It makes me feel sick. It makes me feel sick because I haven't always been an iconoclast when I needed to. I've given in to peer pressure before. I've bullied people. I've been the instigator of bullying. and thinking myself clever or funny or moral for doing so. We have these instincts to conform built into our psyche, built into the core of our being. And it just shuts off that part of my brain that tells me this is wrong, like I shouldn't be doing this. I've gotten into the hype of others before. I've become sort of a willing servant of others. And beyond being something that I'm not proud of, it's also something that I'm afraid to repeat. I'm afraid that whatever culture I jump into, I'm going to become this agent of evil. And I'm going to think that I am moral and just and that everyone else is wrong for not agreeing with me. I know that I have that inclination inside of myself. I know that I have that instinct to just be better than others. And it's terrifying. And that thought has been paralyzing me from moving forward with my work. It's kept me from promoting my work. When I think about becoming a brand, it isn't just a fear of success or failure, but rather it's a fear of what I will do with that power. So now I need an end card where I thank you for tuning in and ask you to like, share, and subscribe. I don't know if you should subscribe. All I know is I'm going to continue to do this because I think that it's helpful for me to talk about this and think about what it is that I'm going through during this journey. With that, all I can say is that I hope to release a video in 2 weeks.